So today's world, so much digital stuff, right? And every single day there's a new algorithm to learn, and there's a new social media channel to learn, and there's new technology, right? Case management software and technology. And lawyers, I think, don't give themselves enough time to sit in quiet and think a bit, either maybe thinking about a client's case and the one thing that could make the case move along and get solved for the client, or thinking about their business, right? And just identifying and focusing on the one big thing, right? That can, if we could move this, everything else would be moving even faster.
I'll give you an example too.
Yeah.
During COVID, for some reason, I developed an irrational fear of sharks. Don't ask me why. I've snorkeled all over the dang world, but I have this irrational fear of sharks. My wife loves Shark Week on Discovery Channel. It's awful. So she will watch these things, and then out of the corner of my eye, something caught my interest because they were going to deal with the top 10 ways to avoid shark attacks. Number one, don't go out in the water after 5 o'clock or early in the morning. 2, don't wear a yellow or a white bathing suit. 3, don't wear jewelry. They went through all these things. And at the end of the thing, I was shocked to find that stay out of the dang water wasn't on the list. Same thing. With lawyers, we want to focus on, how do I increase my conversion rate from intake? Or how do I get more leads or likes or whatever's on social media? They focus on all these other things. But the one thing that I know for sure, without fail, that will positively impact your practice, get you more business, make you happier, be a better lawyer. Nobody wants to talk about that one.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, this is Ben Glass. Welcome back to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, where each episode I get to talk to really interesting people inside and outside the legal world who are making a ding on the world. Got a very interesting guest today, Patrick Slaughter. Patrick's mission in life is to really match up those who need legal services with those frustrated lawyers who, if only they knew how to start their own practice, these two groups could come together and the world would get better. Patrick's backstory is interesting. We'll dig deep in a minute. But basically, for 20 years, he was a magician, knew my buddy Dave D out of the Dan Kennedy world. And when he decided to convert his life from being a magician into going to law school and then starting his own practice after a bit, he took everything he knew about being a magician and marketing that, imported into legal, which is something we talk about a lot. Like, the best ideas come from outside of legal. So, Patrick, thanks for carving out some time today. Thanks for getting on the program.
Man, I appreciate you having me. This is the most fun I'm going to have all day, probably all week.
Well, maybe. I mean, and we had a good little riff before we went live, and I said, hey, we got to stop. Let's just push the button and talk about this stuff. Because as you and I introduced ourselves to each other, we've got threads that go back to the Russell Brunson world, the Dan Kennedy, Bill Glazer world, back to Dave D and magicians. And so you and I have seen a lot of the products and the people over the years. And apparently we were both in Orlando a few months ago for Funnel Hacking Live. So tell us that story a bit about, your career path, 20 years, as you said, chopping your wife in half and levitating her and all of this stuff. It must be pretty cool. And then,
the funny thing is, I started back performing magic back in Chicago. I was a street performer and got fairly good at it. Parents decided I needed to finish my education, so I got my undergraduate degree and then went back to being a professional magician for a number of years. I performed mostly in the resort market and the corporate market and traveled around the world. It was great, made a lot of money, had fun. But then 9/11 happened, and suddenly being a magician traveling with weird crap was not quite as fun as it had been. So I was traveling about 100,000 miles a year on airplanes and got tired. So decided I was going to do something else. I didn't know what that was. Fate and happenstance ended up moving me from Virginia Beach, Virginia to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I ended up going to law school. If you told me I was going to be a lawyer, I would have laughed at you. That was not something that was on my radar. I can tell you the funny story about how all that happened, but I eventually ended up going to law school at a brand new law school. I was part of its inaugural class. in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. And I graduated and was like, okay, now what? And you would have thought, okay, you find a job, you go out, you do the thing. It didn't work for me. I was lucky. I mean, I did well in law school. I was number 2 in my class. I graduated summa cum laude and all that stuff, but I couldn't find a job. I had a friend who let me work for him as a glorified law clerk. He paid me $20 an hour, but it was billable hours. So I was lucky to make $500 a week. And, I did that for a few months. I don't remember it being terribly long, and a few things happened, and I can tell you that story too, but I ended up saying, I got to do something. So I ended up opening my own firm. And when I went to open my firm, I looked around going, what in the blue blazes am I doing? I don't know how to practice law. I don't know what I'm doing. And I couldn't really find a whole lot of people to help me as far as teaching me like the business. And I just assumed that all these lawyers were doing really well. I just assumed that, I was way far behind because I didn't start law school until I was like 39 years old. So I assumed everybody was doing really well. And I started, okay, well, I got to get business. I got to get people come through the door. So I used some of the direct marketing things that I'd learned as a magician, because I figured if people will pay $5,000 for a magic show, I bet they'll pay more for divorce, because you know why divorces are so expensive? Because they're worth it. So I thought I'll do that using that same marketing stuff that I did, and that worked. And then it's like, okay, I got business now. How the heck am I going to figure out how to practice law? And I started kind of using some of the things I'd learned as a magician, because when you're a magician, you have to learn things from books mostly, or at least that's the way I was brought up. So I started, looking about that, and I figured out how to narrow my practice area so I didn't have as much to learn. And suddenly people thought I was good, which was weird because I didn't know what I was doing. And I started getting a lot of people started wanting to hire me. And then it got to be like overwhelming. And then I had to figure out how to manage stuff. And then I thought my wife and I had managed some very large disaster recovery projects. So we started using some of the same stuff that we'd used for that. And things just started kind of clicking and working out. And I'd like to say that I was real smart and just came up with all this stuff, but I am more just a victim of fate, and it kind of came together. So that's the 50-cent version.
You're probably too modest, because to go to law school, at 39, so I am curious now about that story, because you had other options to graduate number 2 in your class, and then to, in a relatively short period of time, start running your own practice, no matter what it was. I mean, there's actually a lot there. So why law school?
Man, I am proof. I tell everybody when they ask me, I am living proof that God has a sense of humor. The first thing, we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, and I thought, well, I need to go to school to do something. I don't know what. So I thought I'd go be a teacher, because my father was an educator, and I thought, summer's off and they don't get paid bad. It'd be all right. So I went to the University of Tennessee, and I talked to the admissions people there, and it was going to take me almost 4 years to get a master's in education, because I was going to have to student teach for a year. And the guy aggravated me, and I said, Lord, I could go to law school and get out sooner than that. And I'm telling you, little pimply-faced kid looked at me dead in the eye and said, if you could get in. And that ticked me off.
Challenge.
I did not have spectacular undergraduate grades. I had like a B average, a 2.8 PA. And when I wasn't really thinking much about it, that kind of ticked me off and got me thinking about law school, but I put it off. I ended up going over to Europe to street perform in Venice and Florence particularly, and did pretty well. But it came on me, okay, I hate to say it's a religious experience, because that sounds kind of crazy, but I was in Venice, and I was like, the body of St. Mark is right there, and I made a bunch of money doing shows. And a docent was showing some of the mosaics in St. Mark's, and it was like somebody said, if I can do all this, why can't I get you into law school? And I thought, well, okay, I'll take the test and try it when I get back. And I did. I came back and I took the test, and I did terrible. I got a 148, terrible. So I was convinced I was never going to have to go to law school. And then I again had this thing back in my head saying, well, you got to apply. You said you'd apply. I said, well, okay, I did. So I ignored it like any other, faithful man. And I started working for Apple. I was selling Apple computers, and I was good at that. I could sell computers, but all my clients were lawyers. Every single one of them, Bill Heck, Robin, all these people were lawyers, and they kept telling me I needed to go to law school. And I kept saying, I can't get into law school. My LSAT's terrible. I'm old. It's not going to happen. And then there was this young lady, I'll never forget her name was Libby King, who I was trying desperately to sell her a computer. And she told me that she just happened to work at the new law school. Turns out it was like 4 miles from my house. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll apply. I'll do what I said I'd do. But I kind of put it off. And then the deadline had passed. I found out the deadline to apply had passed. I'm like, I ain't got to do it this year. I'll do it next year. And then I got an email saying the deadline had been extended. And I went, well, crap. Okay, fine. I can take a hint. So I took my application. I went down. I was wearing cutoff jeans, Birkenstock shoes, and a T-shirt. And I walked in to drop off my application in some little box. And the young lady at the desk said, oh, here, let me introduce you to Paul Carney. He was the director of admissions, and he wanted to talk to me. And I went, come on, I don't want to talk to you. I'm giving you my piece of paper, and I'm getting the heck out of Dodge. I got stuff to do. And he started talking to me, a real nice guy. And he said, now, what instrument did you play? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you were a musician. I know, I was a magician. He said, oh, our dean is an amateur magician. You've got to go meet the dean. And I went, are you kidding me? So he takes me, I meet the dean, Sid Beckman. He knew me from where I had been performing for a long time. And that seemed to be an interesting indication that I was going to go to law school. Long story short, yes, I got in, and there I was.
They were looking for diversity in their class, in their first year class. And
I think
the magician background was diversity.
I think they're just trying to pad the curve for the other smart kids. I think that's what I was.
But the lesson here is I too, and now it's 40 years ago now, but when I went to law school, it was in its first year of full ABA accreditation. It just doesn't really matter, I think, for most people who are going through law school and want to become lawyers. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a couple of minutes about starting law firms. But you also blew past the part, you said when you started your practice, you just started doing the things you learned to do and clients started to come in the family law area. Yes. Tell us about some of the things, the simple things, because they probably were not very complex, I suspect, that got you, a lawyer who, did magic tricks on his way into law school, then your law school, and now you come out and you don't even know how to practice, but you're getting clients. So that's interesting. How did you do it?
The thing that hit me right away, and I knew just from the time I've been in law school, again, that there was a ton of people that needed lawyers. Access to justice numbers will tell you there's a ton of people that need representation. So I knew they were out there. It was just, what was I going to do to be different than everybody else, or to put myself in a position where people would want to find me and hire me? And I never took the attitude of, oh God, I got to get clients. Getting clients was never a problem for me. It just, from the very first day. But I think that's because I put myself out there to say, hey, this is what I do. And these are the very few people that I'm capable. The only thing I did at the beginning was agree divorces, because I figured you couldn't screw them up too awful bad. And by limiting what kind of case I was going to take, it became easier to learn that area of the law. But also it made me sound a little, I don't know what the word for it is, but because I was different than other people. And I did a couple other things. There was an old timer that had said in his day that all lawyers, if you didn't have a case or you didn't have something that you had to do, you were expected to be at the courthouse until lunchtime with a legal pad ready to help the court. And I was crazy enough to say, shoot, why not? So I went to court every day, and I hung out at the courthouse, and the people started talking to me, and the clerks were very nice. They called me Biscuit Boy because I made some biscuits and gravy for one of the clerks who'd been there since Methuselah was a baby. And things just kind of, people knew who I was because they saw me. And I'm sure they talked about me in some kind of way. And judges, I was trying to be helpful. If they needed something, I got funny stories about that, I would do it. And I think just putting yourself out there in any way that you're comfortable doing educates the market that you're available. And if people need what you do and they know that you're out there, they will find you and hire you to do it. And I think nowadays people get so wrapped up in Google ads or social media ads or how do I do this marketing strategy and the click funnel this and the direct mail that. I don't think the medium matters. I think people need to focus on the message more and then have fun disseminating the message through whatever medium you're comfortable with.
There's also a life principle you just espoused, which is put energy into the world first. Like the world doesn't owe you anything. You could have not gone over and sat in the courthouse. And you could have just like waited for the yellow page rep or whatever to come by and sell you an ad, but you didn't. So you put energy into the world first, and then things start to happen. And that's unfortunately kind of a lost life principle with so many people thinking, hey, I went to law school, I have all this debt, like I'm entitled to a good job, I'm entitled to make a lot of money, I'm entitled to have clients come to me. And you're exactly right. Like the market doesn't care about any of that stuff. They don't care about your own needs. They care whether you can help them solve a problem that they're having. And you're right, there's an overwhelming need, I think, for quality legal representation at reasonable fees and rates. And I think honestly, Patrick, I think today's law school, they almost don't even know about that world because everything is geared to send you off to big law so that we can get your alumni money or something, right? When you go and you work your 2 80-hour week jobs at one big law firm. So yeah. So good for you for doing that.
I'm convinced that big law is what I call a plantation business. Yeah. They turned them out of law school with the idea of, hey, we want you to know just enough where we can train you to do what we need you to do, but we don't want you to be able to go out and open your own thing or think you can open your own thing because we need cheap labor. And we need you working for us for a long time. So we convince folks that they have this delayed gratification. If you just work for me for 20 years and let me keep at least 30% to 60% of what you generate, then maybe one day you'll be entitled to have fun and have a decent life. And people buy into that because we've been doing it since the Civil War. Today, the world's just different. And I mean, people, they're just looking for somebody to help them. And if you as a lawyer have the ability to do that and you're nice to folks and you're honest with folks, they can't wait to hand you money. They will come beating down your door to hand you money.
Well, like you said, they're waiting in line at the Apple store to buy the nice shiny new phone or computer or iPad or any of those things. So they have money and it's a matter of priorities.
Hey guys, this is Ben. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, not just the marketing and practice building strategies, but the philosophy of the art of living your best life parts, you should know that my son Brian and I have built a tribe of like-minded lawyers who are living lives of their own design and creating tremendous value for the world within the structure of a law practice. We invite you to join us at the only membership organization for entrepreneurial lawyers that is run by 2 full-time practicing attorneys. Check us out at greatlegalmarketing.com.
So now let's talk. We're recording this late in 2023. So let's now talk to maybe law students or young lawyers who are wondering about, am I smart enough? Do I have enough money? Am I good enough to start my own practice? Because that really is your space right now. Like you've written in the past that you made every mistake known to man and woman. And, you can help someone like speed along that journey without necessarily having all of the tough experiences you did from mistakes. So let's talk to those young lawyers for a bit about what it really takes to start a practice in 2024.
I think the desire to do it and a certain amount of humility and a belief in yourself. Folks, everybody thinks when I know this or when this event happens or when I get comfortable with that, then that will be the time. And those things never happen. You're never going to feel comfortable with it. You're never going to feel like this is the time. You're never going to feel prepared. You're going to have to take a step of faith and do it. And you have to do it with humility because you don't know what you're doing exactly yet. There's a ton of people that will bend over backwards to help you. I can't tell you how many lawyers helped me when I got started, but it was because I recognized I was an idiot. One of the first things I did at the courthouse was take in got little plastic cups, just regular cups you get at the grocery store. And I filled it with Hershey Kisses and little Hershey chocolate bars, little miniatures, and my business card. And I took it to all the clerks at every court that was in the courthouse and said, this is me apologizing for the stuff I'm about to screw up that I don't know anything about. Please protect me from myself. And they thought that was funny. but it served me very well because, I didn't know what I'd go to file something. They'll say, no, that's not right. You need to go fix that. And okay. And I'd go do it. So I think humility helps an awful, awful lot. But at some point, you've got to believe and have faith that what you're doing will produce the results you want. You're going to be able to earn a living. You're going to be able to do the things that you went to law school to be able to do. And the longer you keep doing it, the better you're going to get at it, and the more success you're going to have. My whole principle, or everything I think about law firms, really, there's only three things you have to do, three types of things that you have to do. Everybody gets wrapped up in this strategy or that tactic or this methodology. There's three things. You've got to practice law. Well, go figure. If you're a lawyer, that's easy. First pillar is practicing law. Second thing you got to do is you got to manage things. You got to manage yourself, your time, your money, and your people. And then finally, the last thing you got to do is you got to acquire clients. And those are it. And if you do them in that same proportion, you can't help but be successful. You really can't. I mean, unless you were just a jackwagon of a person who ticks off a plate of cat food, who's mean to people and is arrogant and whatever. As long as you're a decent human being, you can't help but be successful in this business.
I want to emphasize something that you said, and I hope that the young lawyers who are listening to this, I want to get you to believe this. There are a lot of us who will help you, who will mentor you. Yes, many of us run coaching programs and we have events and all of that stuff, for sure. But if you reach out with curiosity and humility and a real desire to learn and to get your questions answered, there's just a ton of us in small firms across the country who have built firms that are meaningful, that are fun places to come to work. And we believe, I don't know if I'm speaking for you on this, Patrick, but maybe we believe that the profession as a whole does a really bad job of mentoring, that the formal mentoring programs are crappy. And that what you need to do is you need to reach out to people like Patrick and Ben and a whole bunch of other people we could introduce you to, on LinkedIn, our friends across the country who say, yes, damn it, like we will help you. Like, feel free to reach out. Now, when you reach out, I want you to ask curious questions. I want you to show me you've done some homework. I want you to show me that you're willing to work and to change. Don't just waste our time. But you got to know that we are out here, and we believe that that's part of our role now. Me, elder statesman in the business 40 years, and we are willing to do this. So good for you for putting it that way, Patrick. I think that's so critical. Let's loop back to the firm now. So your firm is growing, you're doing domestic relations work, and you said, because one of the three things is learning to manage and learning to acquire. And because of your magician and your marketing background, you probably had a lot of the acquiring clients' ideas there. But what did you not know about managing and developing systems and all the sort of stuff that really necessary? And how did you get to learn it?
Man, I was awful. That was the hardest part of the dang job.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. We'd managed when the 4 hurricanes went through Florida in 2004. Zena's my wife. I was a project manager for helping to clear up all the roads in FDOT District 1, which is a lot of roadway. And we had 600 contractors from around the country come in, and we had to manage a whole lot of stuff. And it became very apparent that doing things in a less than organized fashion would keep me up at night and cause all kinds of problems. So Zena was really good at bringing order out of chaos. Just that's her nature, her personality. And I tell everybody I was paid to translate redneck because the engineers couldn't talk to the hillbillies. But we worked it out. And so I realized that was important. And so that was kind of the dawning back of my head. Then also we started making money, and I was like, oh gosh, now this is serious. A friend of ours, Ernie Svensson, I'm sure you know Ernie, he had a small firm boot camp, and I went to that. And that kind of opened my eyes to possibilities of things. And from there, Zena had quit working at her other job, and she's working full time now, managing the office and And so we started kind of working together to say, what are the things that we can do to deal with our actual problems? And this is a funny story. This is one of the things I tell lawyers all the time. They don't want to listen to me. One of the things new lawyers do that drives me nuts whenever they want to deal with imaginary problems. I will tell you, Ben, the only reason I got through calculus in law school was because I was dating the TA in undergrad. I will never forget the day where I walked in and she was getting ready to start teaching her class, and she draws a little I with a negative sign in front of it and says, that's an imaginary number. And we're going to talk about imaginary numbers. In my mind, I'm going, don't we have enough problems with the real ones? And that's the way I feel about problems. You know, most lawyers, they go out and they create all these systems for things that aren't really causing them trouble, that don't necessarily impact their life or their practice in any way. Generally, if you will focus your energy on things that are actual problems, things that are causing you actual heartburn, and you fix those, the other things will solve themselves. So I think learning to focus on things that matter rather than things that could be. Like I was working with a young lady, she's in estate planning down here in Florida. And she had bought Confusionsoft, and she was getting everything set up to automate all this stuff. And she was telling me how she's automating her onboard systems and she's automating this thing. You know, I'm like, Lord God, how many phone calls do you get a week? She's like, 10 or 15. I'm like, what? You going through all this stuff for 10 or 15 calls? Can't you just do that and don't worry about this? But what I've discovered is we as lawyers, we like to solve complicated imaginary problems because it gives us the freedom when we do that to not have to focus on the thing that really matters. Because focusing on the thing that really matters can be uncomfortable because it generally indicates, at least I discovered in my part, that all the major problems my practice had were usually because of me, deficiencies that I had or things that I didn't want to acknowledge. But by focusing on something else, it gave me the freedom not have to deal with the things that really mattered. But when you deal with the things that matter, that's the stuff that improves your practice and improves your life.
There's a book called The War of Art.
Yes,
it's all about that. It's about the resistance, and
yes.
It's about all of the things that, as you just said, like we can imagine these things that aren't really problems, so we can go and solve those because we actually know how to solve them, or we like to tinker, rather than going and identifying and solving the one big thing that could either move cases along or get more cases in or increase the client experience somewhat. And so, again, if you're listening to this, The War of Art is a neat older book about overcoming the resistance that Patrick just talked about. And you don't have to be a lawyer to enjoy the book. It's not actually written for lawyers.
Pressfield. I love his stuff.
And I think you're exactly right. And for, so today's world, so much digital stuff, right? And every single day there's a new algorithm to learn, and there's a new social media channel to learn, and there's new technology, right? Case management software and technology. And lawyers, I think, don't give themselves enough time to sit in quiet and think a bit, either maybe thinking about a client's case and the one thing that could make the case move along and get solved for the client, or thinking about their business, right? And just identifying and focusing on the one big thing, right? That can, if we could move this, everything else would be moving even faster.
I'll give you an example too.
Yeah.
During COVID, for some reason, I developed an irrational fear of sharks. Don't ask me why. I've snorkeled all over the dang world, but I have this irrational fear of sharks. My wife loves Shark Week on Discovery Channel. It's awful. So she will watch these things, and then out of the corner of my eye, something caught my interest because they were going to deal with the top 10 ways to avoid shark attacks. Number 1, don't go out in the water after 5 o'clock or early in the morning. 2, don't wear a yellow or a white bathing suit. 3, don't wear jewelry. They went through all these things. And at the end of the thing, I was shocked to find that stay out of the dang water wasn't on the list. Same thing. With lawyers, we want to focus on, how do I increase my conversion rate from intake? Or how do I get more leads or likes or whatever's on social media? They focus on all these other things. But the one thing that I know for sure, without fail, that will positively impact your practice, get you more business, make you happier, be a better lawyer. Nobody wants to talk about that one.
Yep, that's a big part of it. And you learn that through experience and being around and seeing, because that translates into client experience being better. It translates into having a team that enjoys coming to work for you. And if you have a great team, then the client experience will be better. So all that's true. So tell us, what are you working on today? Who are you working with, and because I think you sold the practice at some point, right?
I did in 2022, a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a
Okay.
half ago. Somebody offered me more money than I thought I'd see. And I said, what the heck? That sounds like a good idea. And my wife and I, we're big fans of Disney World. You can only go to Disney World so many times. So I watched some things. And again, I thought, well, I really want to help kids be able to open a practice. And so I wrote at first, I'm in the ClickFunnels world. And they're like, well, you need to write a lead magnet and do these things and whatever. And my lead magnet turned into like a 120,000 word book. So I wrote a book on my experience on how to open a law firm without spending a ton of money on ads and all this kind of stuff, and just kind of a down and dirty, in the trenches, what I know will work approach to open a law firm. So I wrote the book. That's actually at the publishers right now. It's in the process of being published. It's a hardcover.
What's the title?
The Law Firm Blueprint.
Okay.
And so that's coming out. And here's my problem. I desperately want to help lawyers do this, but I'm also a little bit lazy. So I'm not going to take this on to be I'm not trying to sign up 1,000 people. I'm not trying to turn this into another job, but I do want to help folks. So I have this goal. I want to help 5 people in every state open their own law firm. 250 law firms can serve a whole lot of people. So I'm doing this. I'm working towards this small group coaching program and a small coaching program for folks who can stomach, one, my Southern vernacular, and 2, my kind of direct approach to things. So that's coming. I have a website called ownyourownlawfirm.com. I'm doing a newsletter there. I'm going to be putting out a whole lot of free content, just different videos about different things. So that's all kind of in the process of emerging.
And is your wife a partner in the business?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. It was funny when with the law firm, I had clients and I would tell them, look, I know you're going to want to talk to me. I am funny, I am charming, and dare I say good looking, but I'm expensive to talk to. If you talk to my paralegals, my associates, they're a whole lot less expensive and you're going to be a lot happier. But here's the one thing I can guarantee you. You're worried about what I think, whether I'm mad at you, whether I'm going to stay in your case. You don't need to worry about that. You understand my wife is really in charge. That last name on the door, that Lefevre and Slaughter, it's her last name too. As long as you keep Zena happy, we're going to get along just fine. But if you get Zena mad, I might have to let you go because I got to sleep with her at night. Everything, it's funny, every kind of big major breakthrough that we came through the practice, it was because of something Zena had been saying for 6 months, and I finally just agreed that she was right.
That's
so, yes.
That usually goes. Yeah. Absolutely. Is there a target date for the book release? Is it pre-Christmas? Is it 2024? Or?
I'm really hoping to get everything off by January 1st, 2024. It probably will happen before then. It's the publishers, Ingram Spark, and they have the files, and they're supposed to be doing that right now. And Shanda Trofe, she's real big into all of the ClickFunnels authors people. She's the one that did it for me. She's doing her magic, and I'm just leaving her the heck alone. I had an editor, Mary Rembrandt. And I tell her I'm going to do whatever y'all women tell me to do because I'm married. I'm used to being bossed around by women. I do what I'm told. So they're doing their thing. I expect it'll be sometime in the next week or two. But
that's very exciting. And is there stuff up at ownyourownlawfirm.com right now?
Yes. Right now you can opt in for the newsletter that I'm put out on Fridays. Basically, I'm going to be putting out videos every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Some very direct about law firm things that you can do to help your law firm. Some things are just funny that will help break the monotony of an otherwise dreary job or dreary week. And some are just strictly educational. So I'm going to do that on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. I started doing a little bit. On LinkedIn, I've got a decent presence, I guess. I've got like 3,000 people that seem to like to hear what I have to say. But we're going to expand into YouTube and doing some things that Zena says I need.
Well, there's all sorts of places you can expand into. But remember your own mantra, like keep it simple.
That's my thing. I like video. I like going in front and saying, hey, and just saying, this is what I do. And wherever they want to put it and however that, I leave that to Zena and she'll have fun with that. I've got a friend named John D. Funny story, a bunch of funny stories with him, but he has a knack for being able to make things go viral on TikTok. He has a thing he's doing a course now and everything about viral TikTok videos. He's a fat, overweight, bald guy like I am. He can get in a jacuzzi on a cold Asheville morning and pitch a course for this and has all kinds of people beating down his door to do it. So he and Zena have conspired to do different things with our videos. And I'm just letting them do whatever they want to do.
I think I need to have Zena on as my next guest.
I'm telling you,
Yeah. Yeah.
Every time I took a case that she told me I shouldn't take, I regretted it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah. Well, Patrick, look, it's been great to speak to you. The book is Law Firm Blueprint. The website is ownyourownlawfirm.com. And Patrick is one of those guys out there, and there's guys and gals out there who will help you, who want to help this next generation of lawyers not hate the legal profession, which sadly is like the course for so many folks coming out of law school now, don't even see this alleyway, starting and running your own small firm, get only shown big law stuff, get burned out after 5 or 6 years, and get disgusted with the whole thing. And then they go run and be a magician or something. I don't know.
A lot of
Are you still performing? Do you still perform?
Yes, I do. I like to street perform. I enjoyed the heck out of that because I can just show up, do what I want. People throw money at you and you go away. I went around the world doing that. So I still do that some. I'm also getting into public speaking a little bit more. I didn't really know that was something that I enjoy doing as much as apparently I do, because people have been asking me to do it, and I show up and I talk about human potential. I believe that we have the potential to do a whole lot more than we believe we do. And I think Myron Golden, it's funny, Myron's little brother, who's actually 10 feet taller than him, was the business consultant who sold my practice. So I know those folks. And Myron's belief is that expectation is our human superpower. And I think that's true. So I have a whole presentation, a keynote that is structured around people actually experiencing and physical demonstrations of human potential that people didn't know was possible. And it uses magic tricks and stuff from karate that I was involved with for a while, a whole bunch of things.
Let me ask you this, because now you have my curiosity. So who else do you follow, read? You mentioned Funnel Hacking Live, now Myron Golden. Who else is influential to you these days?
Recently, I'll tell you this. I have these crazy desires. I have 3 stated goals that I want to really accomplish right now that I write down every day. And one of those is, I'll make a long story short, I want to run an Ironman. I want to finish an Ironman by the time of my 55th birthday. I run half marathons and other stuff, but that's going to be stretching it. So I have lots of periods of time where I'm either jogging or riding a bike and I'm listening to Audible. And I've been listening to Benjamin Hardy a lot. I like Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I like a lot of his stuff, but he's very erudite. He's very academic and all of that. So, but I like his stuff. Simon Sinek, I like a lot of his things. Start with Why. I've listened to his Find Your Why right now is one of them. I like Stephen Pressfield, like you talked about, The War of Art. He's got a bunch of other little stuff too, and they're quick, kind of motivational reads, like Put Your Butt in a Seat. I like that one a lot. Other people that I'm involved with that help, man, there's just all kinds of folks all over the country that seem to tolerate me on a regular basis. Most of them are either magicians or in some other kind of field that people wouldn't know a whole lot about or wouldn't care a whole lot about. I just finished reading some books by Eugene Berger. And if Eugene Berger was a magician, he died several years ago, but he put out these books posthumously that revealed different things that he had done. And he was one of the first magicians I met in Chicago when I ended up there. He has a mystery school group of people with Jeff McBride, who's a magician in Vegas that I opened for a number of years. I've got all kinds of folks that tolerate me and I listen to on a regular basis.
Sounds like you have a very happy, fulfilled life.
Man, I'm living the dream.
Yeah.
I get to go to Disney World whenever I want to. My wife still tolerates me. She hadn't filed for divorce. I get up when I want to get up. I go to bed when I want to go to bed. I couldn't ask for anything more than what we got. And honestly, these kids with practicing law should be one of the funnest things you ever get to do.
I agree.
It's just, I don't know where it happened, where somewhere along the line there was this disconnect and people become these miserable curmudgeons. But practicing law, again, even if you don't buy a thing from me, I will probably give you a copy of my book. I will probably work out something from you if you're just willing to give it a shot and do the thing.
I agree. Well, look, hey, thanks for carving out the time today, for being who you are too, because I think the world needs more voices like you have, because these youngins aren't getting this in undergrad and they're not getting this in law school and they're not getting it in the early years of the profession. They're only getting it by getting into rooms, people like you, following you, reading books like yours. Like, this is what you and I and a bunch of others of us now, to keep just pushing this message that the default in the legal profession should not be unhappiness, sadness, and depression. The default should be joy. Yeah.
Life's too short. If you hate it, do something else, but do it the right way. You find out it ain't too bad. If there's any of these things like this, any of these other events, podcasts, I can be on, whatever, let me know. I'm happy to do it. Like I said, I got a bunch of time.
Appreciate it, Patrick. Great to talk to you today, sir.
Hey, you too. Take care, man.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.